You got the call into our office on a Tuesday. 8%, maybe more if you'd negotiated. Your manager smiled, said something about how much they value you, and slid a piece of paper across the desk with a new number on it. And for about 20 minutes, walking back to your desk, you did math in your head. This changes things. Finally, some breathing room. Fast forward 12 months. You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Sunday night, banking app open, looking at your savings balance. And somehow, it's the same number, maybe smaller. You didn't buy a car. You didn't take some extravagant vacation. Nothing you could point to and say, that's where it went. It just went. Quietly. Completely. And you're left with the most confusing feeling in personal finance. You're earning more than you ever have, and somehow you feel exactly as stretched as before. Maybe more. Here's the part that should bother you. This isn't bad luck, and it's not really about spending habits either, not in the way you think. There's a mechanism running in the background of your brain that activates the moment that new number hits your account, and it's been quietly working against almost everyone who's ever gotten a raise. Once you see it, you'll understand why some people can earn six figures and feel like they're drowning, while someone earning half that feels completely fine. And by the end of this, you're going to look at your own last raise and your next one completely differently.
My name is Jorjo, and I spend a lot of time looking at the gap between what people earn and what they actually feel financially. And this is one of the strangest gaps I've found. Today we're talking about why a raise, something that should objectively make your life easier, so often doesn't. If you've ever gotten more money and ended up feeling like you have less control, or you know someone making great money who still seems stressed about every bill, stick around. Hit subscribe, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly where that raise went and how to make sure the next one doesn't disappear the same way. Let me introduce you to two people, Chris and Alicia. They work at the same company, same department, same level. Same Tuesday, actually. They got promoted on the same day, both moving from $65,000 to $80,000 a year, a 23% raise. Identical. Chris was thrilled. First thing he did was move out of his cramped one-bedroom into a nicer place. Slightly bigger, slightly nicer neighborhood, $300 more a month. Reasonable. He'd earned it. A few weeks later, his car started making a noise. Instead of fixing the old one again, he leased something newer. The payment was only a little more than what he was already paying in repairs anyway. Also reasonable. Alicia, meanwhile, didn't do any of that. She kept her apartment, kept her car. On paper, she did everything right. She even set up an automatic transfer, $50 a week, into a savings account the same week the raise hit. Here's where it gets interesting. 2 years later, Chris's savings account looks almost identical to before the raise. Slightly less, actually, because of a few rough months. Meanwhile, Alicia's savings has grown, but only by about $3,000. Over 2 years on a $15,000 raise. Now, you're probably thinking the lesson here is obvious. Chris spent it, Alicia didn't, case closed. But that's not actually what happened. And the reason it's not what happened is the part that should genuinely concern you. Because Alicia did almost everything right, and the raise still mostly vanished, just more slowly and more quietly than Chris's did. So where did it go? For both of them. Here's the first thing to understand. Researchers who study happiness and income have found something that sounds almost too simple to be true. When you ask people how much money they need to live comfortably, their answer is almost never a fixed number. It moves. Specifically, it moves with their current income. Someone making $40,000 a year might say they'd need $60 to feel comfortable. Someone making $80,000 says they'd need $110. Someone making $200,000 says with complete sincerity that they'd need $280. The number doesn't represent some objective cost of comfort. It represents a moving target that stays roughly the same distance ahead of wherever you currently are. Psychologists have a name for the broader pattern. It's called the hedonic treadmill. You run, The treadmill moves, you stay in the same place. But here's what most explanations of the hedonic treadmill miss. They focus on happiness, why winning the lottery doesn't make people happier long term, why a bigger house stops feeling bigger after a few months. What they don't focus on enough is what this does to your actual bank account. Because here's what happens mechanically, inside your head, in the weeks after a raise. Your brain doesn't file the new number away as extra. It files it as the new normal almost immediately. Within a few weeks, sometimes days, your sense of what you should be able to afford recalibrates to match your new income. Not your old spending, your new income.
This is why Chris's apartment upgrade felt so reasonable. It wasn't reasonable compared to his old budget. It was reasonable compared to his new deserved budget, a number his brain had already calculated before he'd even received his first larger paycheck. And this is the part that explains Alicia too. Even though she didn't make any big purchases, her sense of what counted as a small, harmless expense also recalibrated. She started ordering the larger size at the coffee shop, not because she was thirsty, but because the price difference felt negligible now. She stopped comparison shopping for things she used to comparison shop for, because comparison shopping felt like something you do when money is tight, and money didn't feel tight anymore. Each of these, alone, costs almost nothing. Together, over 2 years, they cost her $12,000. Here's the metaphor that makes this click for most people. Your spending behaves like a ratchet. A ratchet only moves one direction. It clicks forward and then it locks. It does not click backward on its own. Once your brain recalibrates to a new spending level, even a slightly higher one, going back below that level doesn't feel like returning to normal. It feels like a cut. It feels like loss. And we already know from research on loss aversion that losses hit roughly twice as hard psychologically as equivalent gains. So your brain will fight, automatically and invisibly, to avoid ever feeling that cut again. Which means once the ratchet clicks forward, it tends to stay there forever, through the next raise and the one after that. Let's put a number on this. Say that $15,000 raise, invested instead of absorbed, earning 7% a year. Left alone for 20 years, that single raise, just that one bump, never repeated, would grow to over $58,000. From one raise, the kind of raise most people get every few years without a second thought. Now imagine 4 or 5 of those over a career, each one captured instead of absorbed. That's not a slightly bigger savings account. That's a completely different retirement. So here's the part that should genuinely change how you think about every future raise you ever get. The villain in this story isn't Chris's apartment. It isn't Elisa's coffee order. Those are symptoms. The actual villain is speed. Specifically, the mismatch in speed between two systems. Your psychological baseline, your sense of what's normal, what you deserve, what counts as a reasonable purchase, recalibrates almost instantly. Within weeks of a raise, your brain has already rewritten the rules. But your bank account, your actual net worth, moves at the speed of arithmetic. Slowly, linearly, one paycheck at a time. So for a brief window, usually somewhere between a few weeks and a few months, there's a gap. The raise has hit your account, but your spending hasn't caught up yet. That gap is the only moment where the extra money is genuinely, meaningfully extra. It's the only window where it hasn't been claimed by anything yet. And almost nobody knows this window exists, so almost nobody uses it. Here's what makes this so insidious. The raise was never really going to arrive as a lump sum you'd consciously decide what to do with. It was always going to arrive as a slow trickle, absorbed in real time by a baseline that updates faster than you can think about it. By the time you'd consciously notice that you have more money now and wonder what to do with it, some of it is already gone, reassigned, spoken for, not by a decision, by a recalibration you didn't know was happening. And this is exactly why almost nobody catches it. There's no single moment of failure to point to, no bad decision you could go back and undo. Just 1,000 invisible micro-adjustments, each one perfectly reasonable on its own,
each one completely consistent with the idea that you make more now, so this is fine. By the time the pattern is visible in your bank account, it's already been running for months, sometimes years. This is also why people on much higher incomes can feel just as financially anxious as people on lower ones. It's not that the anxiety is fake or that they're ungrateful. It's that their new normal now includes a higher rent, a bigger car payment, commitments that scale with the recalibrated baseline, which means any disruption now threatens a bigger structure. The house got bigger, but so did everything that could go wrong with it. Chris isn't worse with money than Alicia, and Alicia isn't some financial genius. They're both running the exact same software. Alicia's version of the recalibration was just smaller and slower, quiet enough that it looked, from the outside, like discipline. So what actually works? Not willpower, not just being more disciplined like Alicia, because we just established that Alicia wasn't actually immune. She was just less affected. Here's what closes the gap for real. First, capture the raise before your baseline does. The moment you know a raise is coming, ideally before the first larger paycheck even lands, set up an automatic transfer for a meaningful chunk of the increase. Not the whole thing. Even 50% works. The key is timing. This has to happen before your brain has had a chance to recalibrate, which means days, not months. If Chris had set up an automatic transfer the same week he got the news, before the new number ever felt normal, a big chunk of that $15,000 would have been locked away before his baseline ever knew it existed.
Second, give yourself a deliberate delay on lifestyle upgrades. Not forever, just 30 days. This sounds small, but it matters because the recalibration that makes a new expense feel reasonable needs repeated exposure to take hold. If you wait 30 days before acting on any new, "I can afford this now" thought, two things happen. Some of those thoughts quietly disappear on their own. They were never really wants, just reflexive recalibration. And the ones that remain, you get to choose deliberately, with your income already partially redirected into savings. You're spending from a baseline that's already adjusted in your favor, instead of one that adjusted against you by default. Third, and this is the one that actually changes the trajectory of an entire career, treat every future raise the same way, automatically, forever. Set the percentage once. 50% of every future increase, gross, goes straight into investments before it ever touches your checking account. You will still feel richer with every raise. Your take-home pay still goes up. Your lifestyle can still slowly improve, but it improves at half the speed your income does, which means the ratchet still clicks forward, but every other click, it also clicks your net worth forward with it. This, in the end, is what separated Alicia from someone who actually broke the pattern. Her $3,000 wasn't nothing. It was a start, but it was an accident of small habits, not a system. A system would have captured half of 15,000 automatically before either of them ever had a chance to feel what more meant. So go back to that Sunday night. Kitchen table, banking app open, looking at a savings number that hasn't moved despite a year of earning more than you ever have. Here's what's different now. You know that number isn't a verdict on your character. It's not proof you're bad with money, or that you don't deserve more, or that people like you just can't get ahead. It's the predictable result of a recalibration that happens faster than thought. One that's been running quietly in the background of literally everyone's financial life, including people whose finances look nothing alike from the outside. The raise didn't disappear because you were careless. It disappeared because nobody ever told you there was a window, small, early, easy to miss, where you actually got to decide what more would mean. Now you know the window exists. And the next time that number on the offer letter changes, you'll know exactly what to do in the days that follow. Not someday, not when things settle down. Immediately. Before your own brain quietly decides for you. That's the difference. Not earning more, deciding first.